From Wall Street to Main Street to help small business owners have the same capital as corporate America and give them the same resources as a larger company. We cover business funding, business credit, scaling, business consulting, and much more. Check out the website at shieldadvisorygroup.com. Welcome to the show, The Liquid Lunch Project.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Liquid Lunch Project. I am Matthew R. Meehan, alongside my partner, the Professor, Luigi Rosa Bianca. What's on tap today, Lou?
Matt, sometimes you and I resort to hard work. Other times it's luck. Today, we are hoping for divine intervention. With a saintly name, our podcast guest today is Sara St. She is the founder of Frugalpreneur, a wonderful podcast that we highly recommend, as well as PodLab Pro, because she's gotten so good at producing her podcast, she's now teaching others how to do it. So, Sara, we welcome you to the podcast. Tell us, why have small business owners forgotten the art of frugality when they're running their business?
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. I think there's kind of a misconception that to start a business that you need to have, you need to invest a whole lot of money or get, maybe in part because of Sharktank, which I love. It's my favorite show. But I think people are just kind of used to that idea of you have to have, 100,000, 500,000, whatever to get a business started. You need venture capitalists or a loan or whatever. If you're launching a retail store or brick and mortar, that may be true. But that's why I recommend online business. There's so many things you can do online, and it's extremely affordable. I mean, you could run an online business I've always run it for under $100 a month. And so I recommend bootstrapping and just setting aside at least $100 a month if you're doing an online business for starting out. And then, of course, as you get more income and clients and customers or more sales, then you can start spending more money. Hopefully not all the money. I mean, you still want to pay yourself unless this is starting as a side hustle. But yeah, I just recommend kind of like starting small, using money that you already have so you don't go into debt, basically. And then as you make more money, if you want, you can then spend more money on the business growth, like with ads, for example, and things like that. But yeah, I've never gone into debt for a business. I've always spent money that I have, and that's what I recommend.
So, Sara, take us back. How did you get involved in the online business and the online world?
So, I started entrepreneurship in 2008. I had 6 different jobs that year, not at the same time, but throughout the course of the year. Realized that I needed to work for myself. So, I actually started a photography business, which is not really an online business, but it wasn't too expensive to start. I mainly did weddings and portraits. But realized that it would get more expensive to maintain and upkeep equipment. And plus I realized I didn't really like taking photos of people, just landscapes, architecture, animals.
That's the problem being a photographer.
Right. And that's where the money is, weddings and portraits. But I didn't like doing it. So I decided I wanted to do something online and tried 20 different things. And from drop shipping, affiliate marketing, blogging, print on demand. And it was kind of through this process that I discovered all these like free or really affordable software programs and resources you can use to run a business on a budget. So I decided to write a book called Frugalpreneur, which talks about the different types of online business models and how to do it on a budget. Well, then I decided to launch a podcast to coincide with the book as like an extra marketing avenue. And the podcast is Frugalpreneur, but it was only going to be like 10 episodes. But I got more leverage and traction with the podcast than the book. And I love the networking and connections and the friendships even. And so I kept it going. I've been doing that for 4 years now. But yeah, so I kind of tried a bunch of different things and then ultimately came into podcasting. I wouldn't say by accident. I mean, I intentionally created a podcast, but the goal wasn't, I had no idea that I was going to keep it going and that then I would have a podcast production agency and teach people how to podcast and things of that nature.
So Matt and I always had this very humble approach to trying to scale a business, that once a business has created that internal fire, right? Let's analogize it to a campfire, right? And the business is now flicking. There's a flame there. You can use money to accelerate that growth. So it's like adding fuel to the fire. But you can never use money to create that fire. And I think that people mistake success and trying to achieve a certain scalability by throwing money at the problem, i.e. the fire, whereas the money should be used to try to scale the fire. So if we can have a campfire become a forest fire, obviously, we need some oxygen and we need some flame. So kind of tell us your opinion. Are we right? We're wrong? We're somewhere in between?
Yeah. So my approach has been to spend as little as possible on, different software and just to run the business, and then spend more money on ads and things of that nature, but I don't really use social media ads. It's more ads within podcast directories or podcast apps or podcast players, because to drive more listeners or downloads to the podcast, and then hopefully in turn, then they eventually become customers. And I found that that's been pretty successful. I so far I've tried, I think, maybe 4 or 5 different advertising, in players and directories. And the ROI is, I think 25 cents per download on the low end, up to $1.11, I think, on the higher end. So for me, that's where I'm spending more money than on kind of the, I guess, back end.
So how does that work? Because we've actually never run any ads for this show at all for the podcast. How does it work with the podcast directories? Do you record something and they push it through onto these various podcasts? Can you explain it for the audience a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways. It depends. So Buzzsprout, I don't know if you're familiar with them. That's a podcast host that, for that one, you would record a little ad for your podcast, and then it would get inserted into other podcasts that are on Buzzsprout. Okay. But the host would be able to, it's not like it gets inserted without their consent. They listen to the ad and determine if they want to include it. But
so they may either share the revenue with them from that ad, or maybe they give them hosting for free in order to do that. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, they do. I don't think they get free hosting, but they do get, I think they get paid, I don't know, some small amount for every download type thing. I'm not on Buzzsprout as a host. I'm on Captivate. So I'm not quite sure how it works from the host perspective. But I've run my ad on other Buzzsprout podcasts. The others that I've done don't require you to record anything. It's more like they just show, it's more of a display ad. So if someone's in an app listening to a podcast, it'll show, on the top or somewhere on the page, your podcast, and then they can click on that and listen or subscribe. So the ones I've used for that, I think it's Castro. Is it Castro or Castos? I get those confused. I think it's Castro, and then Mopod, and then what's the other one that I did? Disco by Headliner. Yeah, so those are the 4 that I've done. That's the one that was only like 25 cents per impression or download.
And did they actually give you statistics? Like if you walked into your Facebook ad manager and you see everything that was downloaded?
Yeah, so basically on all of these, I set my ad campaign to $100. And the reason I went with these 4 is because they were the only 4 that would do it for $100. Everyone else is like $250 minimum to $2,500 and so on. And so basically when the ad when your $100 runs out, then, however long it takes, no more than a week usually, then it'll show you like how many impressions, how many clicks, how many downloads, how many subscribers, and it breaks it down. Now with Buzzsprout ads though, they don't give you any
Won't give you any statistics on it?
I mean, all they'll tell you is that which podcast your ad ran on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what about, there's a whole, like, podcasts and downloads, right? So I ask every podcast though, what's your downloads per episode that you usually?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, I guess it depends on what time frame, but minimum 100 up to 500 usually.
Okay. Yep. So, analytics on podcasts, really hard to determine across the board. It's not as easy as, this many open rates, this many clicks, and this many.
Yeah.
So have you come up with any tricks or figured anything out to dissect that a little bit more?
One thing that kind of irritates me is that it'll tell you how many downloads you have. But my question is, okay, let's say you have 100 downloads on a given day. So does that mean one person downloaded 100 episodes or 100 people downloaded one episode? Like, I want that specific information. So that's kind of frustrating. Hopefully over time, the different podcast players and platforms will get more detailed with that. Because right now, yeah, you can know where, usually depending on who your host is, and then you can even go into like Apple and Spotify and see certain things, but it'll tell you like the different countries or...
Yeah, but it doesn't even tell you how many subscribers you have.
Right. That's the
black hole. It's like, I'm just guessing.
Yeah.
My mom listens to this 700 times today.
Yeah, exactly. That's the frustrating thing. Like some places will tell you how many subscribers. Like, I don't know if you have your podcast on YouTube, but at least on the channel, it'll tell you how many subscribers. But like on your podcast, yeah,
I just feel like podcasting. So we take our podcast, we put it to our YouTube channel. Everybody listening, go to our YouTube channel so you could actually see what me and Luigi look like and not just hear us. But I do feel like podcasting is more when you're in the car, like you're listening to a podcast when you're in the car, when you're in the gym, Sometimes I'll put Joe Rogan on in my car on Spotify. The video's there, and it's kind of distracting, right? When I'm seeing the video pop up and him at the same time and listening at the same time. So it's kind of, and to get people to move from the auditory platform to a video platform to migrate, kind of hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, I heard a recent statistic. I don't know what the number is, but that a vast majority of people actually are listening to podcasts on YouTube now. Like,
really?
Even if it's video, they'll have it play, but they won't be watching the video. It'll be in their pocket or they'll be driving or whatever. So they're listening to the audio from the video without watching the video. And I thought that was interesting. Like, people maybe don't know how to access a podcast and that's how they do it. I don't know.
I use Apple Podcasts.
Me too.
Spotify. Those are the two biggest players in the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting how it's evolved. You've been doing this for over 4 years now. You've had some amazing guests on your show, right? Give us some. Who's your favorite guest? Give us some insight.
Ooh, my favorite guest. Oh, I really enjoy having Alex Sanfilippo from PodMatch. I've had him on twice. He's the only person I've had on twice so far. Let's see. I mean, of course, the big ones, the Jordan Harbinger, John Lee Dumas, Pat Flynn, Mike Michalowicz, all those obviously were some of my favorites as well. The episode that has, last I checked, which was a while ago, that had the most downloads or has done the best is actually with someone that most people probably don't even know. His name is Yui, and he's originally from Africa, I think, or I forget, somewhere over there. And he came to the U.S. several years ago with just $100 and bootstrapped. He basically, okay, so he had $100, did something to get about $2,000, bought a camera, then started doing photography. Then when he had a certain amount of money, then he did the next thing and next thing. It was kind of like a stepladder. And now he has, I think, 3 software companies, and he's like a multimillionaire or whatever, but he bootstrapped it the entire way. So that episode has done really, and I think part of the reason why that, I mean, maybe he shared.
Oh, I know why. I know why it was. The accent. It was his accent.
Oh.
So South Africa. People love that accent.
Yeah. Of course, they don't probably know what the accent is when that, until they click on it and listen. But I think also the titling of that episode is what helped, because I think it was like what was it? From $100 to 7 figures or something like that. I think the title was very clickable or interesting.
So where do you see podcasting going in the next few years?
Well, okay. One trend I think is shorter podcasts. I'm finding, so a lot of my podcasts are 30 to 60 minutes, but I'm finding that I get more downloads on episodes that are like 20 minutes or less, which are usually more the solo episodes or whatever. But I think that's going to be one thing. This next thing I don't really like, and I don't think I'm going to use, but people might start using AI for podcasting where, they record a sample of their voice and then they don't actually record the podcast episode. They just type a script or something and then have an AI voice that matches their voice, like actually do the podcast episode so that they don't even have to record it. I bet that's going to become more of a thing. I don't know that it's something I would ever do. Seems kind of weird, but let's see what else. I know that like short form video. So recording a podcast on a platform like this, where there's video, and then creating like little snippets to put on TikTok or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram. I think that's definitely, that's already pretty big. Aside from that, I just think it's going to continue to grow. I think businesses in particular need a podcast at a certain point, just as an extra way. First of all, it's not free, but pretty close. Like, you have to pay for your podcast hosts and stuff, but it's a very affordable way to get more exposure, get your name and your brand out there. And then also guesting on podcasts like I'm doing, getting exposure to other people's audiences as well. So even if you're a host, I recommend guesting as well. So, yeah.
Let's dive into the businesses for a second, right? You said every business should have a podcast, right? I totally agree with you. But let's use some examples here. Let's say we have Joe the Plumber, right? Joe the Plumber has a podcast. What the hell does Joe the Plumber think he's going to talk about? Because he can't go and talk about plumbing the whole time. So how do you suggest he goes about it? How do you help businesses that you work with decide which angle to take?
Okay, so in that example, if it's Joe the Plumber, I would recommend doing like short, punchy type episodes, 5-10 minutes, where you are describing how to fix a certain problem. like teaching someone how to fix it themselves. And of course, only so many people are going to want to do that. And then they might be like, no, I'm just going to hire this guy to do it. Or like not even necessarily teaching people how to fix a certain plumbing problem, but maybe things to look out for or reminders like, okay, winter's coming up. So, when it's going to freeze, stuff like that. And then, basically, see, the thing with Joe the Plumber would be, it'd be a local podcast. Like if I'm in Dallas, so let's just say Dallas. Let's say he's a plumber in Dallas. He's probably not going to get a whole lot of business from somebody in California. Obviously, it doesn't make any sense. So obviously have episodes that are relevant to the area that he's in. And then I think even on I think it's Spotify, you can actually run ads to certain zip codes, I believe, or certain cities. So that might be a good use for that. But yeah, I mean, sure, Joe the Plumber could start talking about his personal life and things unrelated to plumbing, but I don't know how interested people would be in that. But yeah, that would be my suggestion on something like that.
Very nice. Lou, I know you had a question, so you want to jump in?
Yeah, I just wanted to segue because Sarah's belief that, most small businesses should have some sort of podcast venue. That was probably the brainchild for PodLab Pro. Walk us through what your business PodLab Pro is and how that assists podcast newbies in producing their shows.
Yeah, so I have two companies, so to speak. So PodLab.pro, that's a very brand new platform that's more of an education with like different courses starting at like $9 to $49 depending on. But, there's a lot of podcast courses out there, but they're like $500 and they cover a whole gamut of stuff. So what I decided to do was do like mini courses, maybe about 30 minutes or so, maybe an hour at most, that cover a very specific type of software or specific method or whatever, and then, charge a much more affordable fee. And then there's the subscription option where you can just get access to all the courses. So that's something that is still kind of in production. I'm releasing courses as time goes on. But then my production agency is thepodplanet.com. And that's basically production, editing, show notes, transcripts, social graphics, videograms, audiograms, all that kind of post-production stuff that most people don't like to do. I was doing it and still do for my own podcast. And so now I help other people with their podcasts. And there are a lot of podcast production agencies out there, but they usually charge a monthly retainer of $1,000 to $5,000 plus, and it includes very specific things and a certain number of episodes. So I decided to just do everything a la carte, where it's per episode pricing and per service. Like someone might only want their podcast edited, but don't want all the graphics and the show notes and all that. So basically everything's just divided out that way because I hadn't really seen anyone else do it that way. So I figure, especially with my audience being, bootstrapping, that it might be the more affordable way to go initially.
Awesome. So why don't you tell the audience where they can find PodPlanet and you?
Okay, sure.
Socials.
Yeah. So, on social media, I'm just at the Sara St. John pretty much everywhere. But I actually give away my ebooks, my podcast related ebooks for free, the PDF version at thepodplanet.com/free. And then the other site is podlab.pro.
Awesome. So Sara, we want to be respectful of your time. We really appreciate you being here with us. But I do have one question before I let you run. If you had to pick one podcasting host today, which one would it be?
The podcast hosting provider or person?
Provider.
Oh, Captivate. That's who I use. I love Captivate. Well, who do y'all use?
I think we use Libsyn. With it.
Yeah.
So we started with them, and we actually hired somebody like you to help us get started.
Oh,
And then they put us on Libsyn, so we've just stayed there. We never migrated from there. But Sarah, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you being here. Guys, that's a wrap. The Liquid Lunch Project. We'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the show. And make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. We'll see you on the next episode of The Liquid Lunch Project.